The salt came first, not the sea salt they write about in travel magazines, clean and poetic. This was raw, mineral, alive. It coated my lips before I even stepped out of the car, and I tasted it the way you taste a word you've been waiting to say for a very long time. Domenico's hand found the small of my back as we walked toward the villa. The gravel crunched beneath my sandals, each step a small collapse into the warm earth. Lemon trees lined the path, their fruit heavy and impossibly yellow against the deep blue sky. And for a moment I thought I had walked into one of Nonna Lucia's stories. The ones she told on summer evenings in Brooklyn, her hands busy with basil, her voice thick with the memory of a place she would never see again. The villa rose above us like something that had grown from the cliff itself. White stone, arched windows, terracotta roof tiles the color of dried blood. Bougainvillea climbed the eastern wall in great violent bursts of magenta, and somewhere below, far below, the Tyrrhenian Sea exhaled against the rocks. A woman appeared in the doorway before we reached it, small, silver-haired, her hands clasped tight against her apron. Rosella. She bowed her head when Domenico spoke to her in dialect, and something in the angle of that bow made me pause. It was not the greeting of a housekeeper welcoming guests. It was something deeper, something much older. A gesture that belonged to a world I had only glimpsed in my grandmother's silences. I touched the St. Rita medal on my bracelet and followed him inside. The bedroom was all white linen and sea light. Sheer curtains drifted inward with the coastal breeze, and the terracotta tiles were cool beneath my bare feet when I slipped off my sandals. I stood at the arched window and watched the sea stretch toward a horizon that seemed to promise nothing but distance. The air smelled of jasmine and hot stone, and I breathed it in until my lungs ached. His suitcase was already open on the luggage rack, everything folded with military precision. Mine sat untouched beside it, still zipped, still holding the shape of another life. I noticed a second door at the far end of the hallway, heavier than the others, dark wood with an iron latch. Closed. "Where does that go?" I asked. "Just storage," he said. "Old things, family things." He kissed my temple. His cologne mixed with the salt air, something dark and warm beneath the citrus. I leaned into him because that was what you did on the first night of your honeymoon, in a villa perched above the sea, with a man who had made you his wife only 3 days ago. But my fingers found the medal again, the tiny face of St. Rita, worn smooth by my grandmother's thumb before mine, and I held it the way you hold a question you are not yet brave enough to ask. By the third morning, I had memorized the rhythms of the villa the way I memorize a garden. Which doors opened easily and which resisted, where the light fell at different hours, how the stone stairs leading to the terrace held the warmth of yesterday's sun until mid-morning, then turned cool in the shade. Rosella brought espresso at 7 each day, 2 small cups on a ceramic tray, and she never once looked me in the eye. She spoke only to Domenico, and only when he spoke first. I watched her hands as she set the tray down. They trembled, just slightly, the way leaves tremble before a storm when the air is still, but something is shifting above. I sketched the bougainvillea from the terrace that morning, my notebook open on the marble table, my pencil moving in the easy, distracted way it does when I am thinking about something else entirely. Domenico had been on the phone since before dawn. I had felt the mattress shift, heard the soft click of the study door, the low, urgent murmur of Italian too fast for me to follow. When he came out to the terrace, he was smiling. That particular smile he wore like a good suit, tailored and precise. "Business," he said. "Nothing that touches us here." I nodded and kept sketching, but I was drawing thorns now instead of blossoms. The black car arrived after lunch. I heard it first. The crunch of gravel different from the villa's small delivery truck. Heavier. More deliberate. From the kitchen window, I watched a large black vehicle with tinted windows park beside the lemon trees, and a stocky man stepped out carrying a leather portfolio. He did not look at the view. He did not pause. He walked straight to the villa's side entrance, the one I had been told led to storage. Domenico met him at the door, and they disappeared inside. I washed the lunch dishes slowly, my hands in warm water, soap suds catching the light from the small window above the sink. Through that window I could see the lemon trees, their branches bowing under the weight of fruit nobody picked. I counted the lemons on the nearest branch. 14. I counted them again. Still 14. He was gone for 2 hours. When he returned, the smile was different. Not tailored. Stitched. That evening, the study door was unlocked. I do not know why I tried it. Perhaps because the villa had started to feel like a garden where certain beds were roped off. And I have never been good at staying on the path. The brass desk lamp was still warm when I touched it. Papers fanned across the green leather surface. Columns of numbers. Names I did not recognize. A map of the southern coast with small red marks at intervals. And the black leather portfolio, its brass corners catching the lamplight. The monogrammed initials facing up. DV. My husband's initials. On a document that looked nothing like business. I remembered the first time he walked into my shop. October, late afternoon. The light already going amber through the storefront glass. I was trimming roses for a funeral arrangement, knee-deep in the particular silence that comes with working near grief, when the door chimed and a man in a dark coat filled the frame. He wanted white peonies. Not a dozen. He wanted every white peony I had. And he did not ask the price. His hands rested on the counter while I wrapped them, and I noticed the scar across the back of his right hand, before I noticed anything else. A thin white line, old, the kind of mark that does not come from a kitchen accident. He came back every Friday after that. Always white peonies, always that same calm attention, as though the rest of the world had been put on hold, and only the flowers and the woman selling them were real. He asked me about the arrangements in the window. He remembered what I told him. He said my hands made beautiful things from fragile ones, and that was a talent most people never learned. By December, he knew about Nonna Lucia, about the bracelet, about the way I talked to the plants when I thought nobody was listening. By February, I knew he was wealthy, that people stepped aside when he entered a room, that doors opened for him that stayed closed for everyone else. By April, he told me he was in international trade, that his family had been in the business for generations along the southern coast. I did not ask which business. I was arranging lilies the day he proposed, my hands deep in green water and pollen dust, and when he slid the ring onto my finger, it caught the last of the afternoon light, and I thought, this is the most beautiful thing that has ever happened in this small, quiet shop of mine. Standing in his study now, 3 months married, and 5,000 miles from that shop, I understood that I had arranged my own blindness as carefully as any bouquet. I had trimmed the thorns, shaped the stems, positioned everything to catch the light from the most flattering angle. I confronted him at dinner on the terrace. The sea was black beneath us, the sky salted with stars, and 2 glasses of wine sat on the marble table between us. I told him what I had seen in the study, the papers, the map, the portfolio with his initials. He did not flinch. He set down his glass with the precise care of a man who controls every gesture, and he told me a version of the truth the way you tell a child a version of a fairy tale. His family had obligations, old ones, responsibilities that had been passed down like the villa itself. He used the word protezione and made it sound like a sacrament. I asked him what exactly he was protecting. He looked at me across the candlelight and said, "You, Valentina, everything I do now protects you." The wine tasted different after that. The terrace felt different. The stars felt very far away. I tested the edges the next day the way you test a fence when you suspect the gate is locked. A walk down the cliffside path, Just to the village, I told him. To buy flowers for the terrace table. A normal, harmless thing for a woman to do on her honeymoon. Sal appeared before I reached the second turn. Not threatening. Smiling even, the way a wall smiles when it is doing its job. "Signora Valenti," he said, using my new name like a collar being fastened. "It is not safe alone on this path. There are loose stones. Sharp drops. I will walk with you." He walked 3 steps behind me all the way to the village, and 3 steps behind me all the way back. I bought white geraniums in a terracotta pot and carried them home like evidence of my own freedom, though by the time I set them on the terrace table, I could feel how thin that evidence was. That night, I lay in the white bed and listened to the sea, and tried to count the ways my life had changed since the wedding. The villa was beautiful. The food was extraordinary. Domenico touched me with a tenderness that made my chest ache with its sincerity. And none of it, not the beauty nor the food nor the tenderness, altered the simple fact that I could not walk to a village alone. I found Rosella in the kitchen the next morning, earlier than usual, before Domenico woke. She was making sfogliatelle, her small hands working the dough with a patience that looked like prayer. I sat at the butcher block island and watched her, and after a long silence she looked up at me. It was the first time she had met my eyes since I arrived. She said only one sentence in careful, deliberate English. "Every wife in this family learns to see with both eyes open." Then she went back to the dough, and when Domenico appeared in the doorway 10 minutes later, she was once again the silent woman who only spoke when spoken to. The days took on the texture of a beautiful captivity. Mornings on the terrace with espresso and my notebook, sketching flowers that were starting to look more like maps, afternoons in the garden or the kitchen. Evenings with Domenico on the terrace, wine and conversation that circled the truth the way water circles a drain. He was generous, attentive, and unfailingly kind. And each kindness was a silk thread binding me tighter to a pattern I could not yet see in full. I began leaving my notebook open on different surfaces throughout the villa. A page of sketches on his desk. A half-finished arrangement list on the kitchen island beside the copper pots. Small fragments of my presence placed like markers in a garden. Quiet claims to spaces that were meant to be forbidden. He noticed. He always noticed everything. And he said nothing, which frightened me more than any warning could have. The phone call came on a Tuesday, just past midnight. I woke to the empty bed, the sheets still warm, and followed the sound of his voice down the dark corridor. He was speaking rapid Calabrian dialect into the phone, and even with my limited Italian, I understood the tone. This was not negotiation. This was command. I pressed my back to the cool corridor wall and listened to a man I did not know living inside the man I had married. Through the slim opening of the door, I could see the brass lamp throwing gold across the desk, the black portfolio open, papers I could not read from this distance, and his shadow enormous on the bookshelves behind him. His hand rested flat on the desk surface, and I could see both rings catching the light differently. The platinum wedding band reflecting, the titanium ring absorbing. 2 rings, 2 lives, both on the same hand. In the days that followed, the picture assembled itself the way a garden reveals its design only from above. The men who came through the side entrance at odd hours, carrying leather cases, the satellite phone in the study drawer. The way every tradesman in the village greeted him with a careful respect that looked, from certain angles, exactly like fear. His mother called on a Thursday afternoon. Patrizia's voice came through the phone Domenico had left on the terrace table, and I answered because it rang and because I was his wife. She did not waste a single word on warmth. She told me I was part of the Valenti family now, and the family had survived for 4 generations, because its women understood one thing. Loyalty is not a feeling, she said. "It is a practice. You practice it every day, and in return the family gives you everything." "And if I choose not to practice it?" I asked. The silence lasted 5 seconds. It was the loudest thing I had heard since arriving. That evening I sat across from Domenico on the terrace and told him I knew. Not the details, not the hierarchy, not the names, but the shape of it, the weight. I told him I was not a fool, and I needed him to stop curating my reality. He was quiet for a long time. The sea moved below us in the dark. Then he told me about his father, who died when Domenico was 19, about the choice that was not a choice, about the things he had done to keep the people he loved safe, and how that list of people had been very short until he walked into a flower shop and watched a woman talk to roses as if they could hear her. His voice cracked on that sentence. Just barely, like a hairline fracture in porcelain. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. I felt the scar beneath my palm, and the cold titanium, and the wedding band that matched mine. For the first time I was touching him with both eyes open. The men came 3 days before we were supposed to leave. I heard the gravel first, then voices, sharp and numerous, and Domenico was on his feet before I understood what was happening. He spoke one word to Sal and the villa transformed. Shutters closed. The side entrance sealed. Rosella disappeared into the kitchen, and I heard the lock turn behind her. Domenico took my face in his hands, and for one breath, I saw everything he had been hiding behind the charm and the tailored smiles. Not the business, not the power, the fear, raw and specific, and aimed entirely at the possibility of losing me. "Stay in the bedroom," he said. "Do not open the shutters. I will come for you." I did as he asked. Not because I was obedient, because in his voice I heard the same note my nonna used when she spoke about the night she left Naples. The sound a person makes when the danger is real, and love is the only thing between you and the worst of it. The hours moved like cold honey. I sat on the edge of the white bed with my hands in my lap, my bracelet warm against my wrist. I listened to the villa breathe around me. Footsteps on stone. A car engine starting, then cutting. Voices rising and falling like weather that has not yet decided what it wants to become. When the bedroom door finally opened, it was dark outside, and the terrace was silent, and the sea was the only sound left. Domenico stood in the doorway with his shirt creased, his sleeves rolled, his face carrying the exhaustion of a man who has moved everything in his power to keep one room safe. He sat beside me on the bed and said nothing for a long time. His hand found mine. His thumb traced the St. Rita medal on my bracelet, slowly, carefully, as though reading it by touch, as though the saint might tell him something I had not. I did not ask what had happened. I would learn in time. I would learn all of it, because I had chosen to see, and seeing was something you could not undo. Instead, I looked at our hands together on the white linen, his wide and scarred, mine slender and rough from thorns, both wearing rings that meant something neither of us had fully understood when we exchanged them. The honeymoon was over. The marriage, the real one, was just beginning. 3 days later, standing at the villa's gate with my bag packed and the sea wind in my hair, I understood something Nonna Lucia never said aloud but carried in every story. Love is not the absence of darkness. It is the decision to stay when the lights come on, and the room looks nothing like you imagined. If this story reached something in you, something you recognize from your own life or your own choices, I would love to know. Press that like button and leave me a comment. Tell me, have you ever discovered that someone you loved was hiding a part of themselves? And what did you do when you finally saw the truth?